Welcome to episode 3 of season 3. I don't know why. I decided to make this like professional wrestling. But this is episode 3 of season 3 of the Sunday morning extra podcast on Wednesday. No, it's Monday.
I feel like it goes well with the intro, though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's much more. Yeah. We've added a frill.
A frill?
I don't know if you guys actually watched the show.
I did. I saw it.
Yeah.
I was like, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the intro. It's new.
Yeah, we now have a 3-second intro and a 3-second outro. It's the same thing. But yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. We have a whole
So if you've never seen the outro, you have to watch it all the way to the end.
Yeah.
Or fast forward and then just watch the end.
So there was, when Glenda and I were very first married, we were living in an apartment off East Chase Parkway and 30. And not far from there is this little hole in the wall in a strip center that's called No Frills Grill. We loved it because there were no frills. So at some point we go in there and I think the one sort of frill was they had a roll of paper towels on the table that you could wipe your greasy hands on.
Ooh,
and at some point, I think they introduced a laminated menu. No. They've added a frill. It's no good. Or maybe it was like a holder for the paper towel roll or something. It's like, you added a frill.
That reminds me, many years ago now, unfortunately, praise God, it was many years ago, 2020, COVID, all that stuff. And you know how people, they all the restaurants would go to like the QR code menu or like the one page thing, very reduced. I remember like the day I was in a Denny's and they slapped the regular type menu back down on the table, and I went to open it and it was like syrup all stuck in there, and I'm like, we're back, baby.
Get nostalgic.
I did. I was like, COVID is over now because we got these nasty grimy menus back. That's what I'm talking about.
That is 2019 syrup on this menu. It's aged maple.
Yes,
is what
aged maple.
If you were able to join us on Sunday, we were talking about being content, which I love that because Glenda has talked about, I keep mentioning Glenda on this particular episode. It's one of her favorite verses is, she's always talking about, it's a secret. Paul says being content is a secret. We got to learn the secret. What's the secret? I thought it was great. Like, the secret is. It was really good. But your first, this is going to get to a round table discussion, so put on your thinking caps. But my dad was born in 1931, 32. I get a little lost on that. So his formidable childhood years were the Depression. And he would often tell stories about going to the movie theater on Saturday and for one dime could watch like a Three Stooges, a cartoon animated thing, a newsreel, and maybe a double feature for a dime. Or go and get a gallon of gas, like his dad would go get a gallon of gas for a nickel. And which is exactly how I felt when you put up that slide that said, at 7-Eleven, you could get a gallon of gas, like regular gallon, not unleaded, regular, with lead, for 79 cents. And I thought, I remember the very sad day, because I thought it was a personal loss when it was over $1, when I couldn't just, when the amount of gallons was less than the amount of dollars I was putting in my car. I thought that was a very sad day.
Yeah. Well, and I got to give a shout out to a very perceptive church member who came up to me afterwards, and he said, man, he's like, I love that picture. He's like, did you realize that there wasn't even a place for $1? Like, it was like in that picture, it was the permanent decimal point. Yeah. Because it was unthinkable that gas would ever be over $1. And then, so we're talking about that, and I was like, no, you know what? I guess I didn't pay that close attention. I said, it was actually harder to find that picture than I thought it would be. But can you imagine, like, if you are a gas station sign company, when gas goes over $1, like you're living the high life, because every gas station is going to need a new sign now so that you can put the dollar in there.
And if I remember correctly, and I was pretty young, I think the $1 became just a permanent one. Like, it wasn't an interchangeable one at first.
For a long time, yeah.
Yeah, who imagined that it would double to $2.
Mm-hmm. I had a distinct memory. I'm a little younger than you guys. I remember one time there was the gas station in things like off I-20 that was 99 cents. So that was the only time in my entire life I can remember. I was like, Mom, we need to stop. We need to stop and go to the 99 cent one because it was I was so used to it being over $1 when I was a kid. And yeah,
it just hurts my soul.
Yeah.
But I think in that, so because I've had these discussions with my daughter, but when was it for you when you realized the value of the dollar is less, like you can buy less now than you used to be able to with the same amount? Like I know there are some stores that what they'll do to compensate is keep the dollar amount the same and then just reduce the size of the thing. So it's whatever, but like you walk into a store and like I used to be able to buy like the picture of this is what $20 used to buy however long ago, and now it's a stalk of celery or whatever. That's next week? Oh no! Preview.
Don't. That's,
spoiler alert.
That's my last meme.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
But where was that moment for you, or a moment? I feel like I get that like every 6 months now.
Yeah. So this wasn't necessarily like the moment, but it's something that bugs me to this day, and it's a cup of coffee at a diner or at a restaurant. Like when I first started drinking coffee. You know, not the frou-frou, like hot chocolate drinks, actual just coffee.
Yeah.
You know, you wanted coffee with your meal, it was like $1. And if it was $1.59, it was like, wow, these people are raking me over the coals for a cup of coffee, right? You can't go to a restaurant without paying at least $3 for a cup. I've stopped ordering coffee at restaurants. Me and Wendy will go out for breakfast, and I'll make a cup of coffee ahead of time at home, slam it down because I refuse to pay $3, $4 for a cup of coffee at a diner. Anyway, that's me.
I feel your pain, but I drink at least a pot and a half. So I get my money's worth.
$3 worth. I hear you.
Spread it over.
Well, I think there was before memes were memes. There was some kind of thing of like a thumbnail sketch on a napkin that said "cup of coffee, 10 cents." And then the makers of Starbucks and like, let's make it $3. Brilliant, you know. Like, this was their business model. It's like something that should cost a dime. Let's jack it way up. Yeah.
I think the moment for me was when the $5 footlong from Subway was the thing. Like, I remember in high school, that was like, okay, yeah, $5 footlong, that's like reasonable. And it's just like, now it's a $5 like for a 6-inch is basically what it is now. It doesn't sound as good.
Because they took it up to $6 or something like that. Doesn't.
Yeah, and then I think there was like one period after that they dipped back down. We're back to the $5, and then it's never. I've never seen that.
Never
again.
looked back. So. But somehow, like the Sam's pizza deal is still $2.50. I don't know what they're doing. They've got to be losing money.
Yeah, well, they lose money there because they get you in.
Yeah,
it's all the people.
I think that and like the rotisserie chicken, or like they're gonna keep those.
Yeah,
as the lost leader.
I think for me, it's a little bit the opposite of this, but it's when you think about prices and particularly related to technology. So in 2002, I had this tech sales job.
Okay.
And this was right about the time that like the thumb drives were coming out. Okay. And I gladly paid like $150 for, are you ready? A 128 megabyte.
Yes. Okay.
128 megabyte thumb drive, because it was life-changing to be able to just, pop that thumb drive in and do what I needed to do to put the program on the customer's computer, do all that. And then now, I mean, like 128 megabytes, like that's nothing.
They don't even make those.
Of course, they don't make them, but of course now you can buy like a terabyte for 50 cents or something. You know? So it's, but yeah, things are definitely different.
I think I had some conversation with my daughter about salaries or something, and she was looking at the costs of living, or I can't remember what it was. She's like, man, that's a lot of money. Like, you're like really raking in the dollar. I say, well, here's the deal. Buying power of $1 keeps going down because of inflation or whatever, all of the the economics is. And so my theory is that everything still costs the same, just the buying power is a lot less. So a stick of gum is still whatever a stick of gum is, but just because of all the other mechanics of economics, it now costs a lot more. But it's not like, man, this has really got expensive, or man, I'm really making a lot of money. Like, no, purchasing power is the same. Like, it hasn't really the how far it goes, but it takes more dollars. But I don't know if that's accurate or not. I'm not an economist. I haven't even played one on TV. I'm just,
speculating.
It's speculative.
That's a good financial.
That's financial. I mean, it's not wise, but it is financial. So in talking about contentment, you kept hitting this theme of this is not an American mentality, or this is not an American theme or an American message. And you said something about 70% of the GDP, or the gross domestic product, is due to inflation.
No, it's consumer spending.
Consumer spending.
Yeah.
You mentioned that there was more to that than you were able to share on Sunday. So I was wondering if you would.
Yeah, I think just
give us the other 30%.
The other 30%. Well, I think we just, it's kind of like the fish is in water and they don't know that they're in water, right? Mm-hmm. And so we are just immersed in a consumerism culture. And also on top of that, there's consumerism and comparison. And I think we don't even realize it, So I was trying to think about some of how do we experience that, And so I didn't get to this. It was a slide I just chose to skip over on Sunday. And some people wonder, is he ever pay attention to the clock? I do. And so I left this whole slide out, and the whole explanation of it, saved it for today. So here you go. If you're listening or watching. So there's kind of like three big categories here. There's this social media amplification, we'll call it that there's all the platforms. There's people, they're like the influencers, right? And they are living this certain kind of a lifestyle that is really not real. There's the whole thing about like filter and not filter and, all that. But there are people who I was reading something about, like it's a lady who is some type of an influencer, right? And she is like portraying this, certain type of life as a mom with kids and all that. It's totally not real. She has a second house that stays like pristine. That is basically her studio. Wow. All right. And her kids are being watched by a nanny. And then she brings the kids in and like will do like we're finger painting at this table, but the rest of the house is immaculate, like that's not where they live. This is basically the studio, right? So you see that with travel, people taking these amazing vacations. And I don't know about you guys, but if I just look, it's like everybody I know is on an amazing vacation right now, and I'm not. Right. And it's like, wow, do they even work? They're always on vacation. I don't know how they afford it, but they're always on vacation. Then you hear all these success stories, and it makes like life it's not just normal, regular life, like like nobody's going to follow me around with a camera 24/7 and make a reality show of my life. It's just not that interesting because most of life is mundane. So we have this, this amplification that takes place on social media, and you see like, I gotta have that. I gotta, whatever it is that they are having or doing, I want to do that. And so that adds to this consumerism. In fact, there's this was actually really helpful. A podcaster guy that I listened to, he just released a really short one, and it's like it was an episode where he ran down all the equipment that he uses and like his whole setup, and it was pretty cool. It was fascinating. And after watching that, I'm like, we need a new studio. Because it's like, it's what we have isn't good enough.
Yeah.
But it is. It's good enough. So then you got social media, you've got what we'll call endless product cycles. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's technology, it's entertainment. There's this push for constant upgrades. Right? Like it's never like, it's one and done, right? And I was telling you earlier before we came in here and started recording, so I've felt myself over the years, I've got an Apple Watch and it's an older Apple Watch. And 2 times now I have saved up money and I'm like, I got to get a newer Apple Watch because mine's like, Apple Watch 2, right? I didn't get it when it first came out. And then a few years later, I'm like, okay, I got one, and I need a new one. I need the latest one. But 2 times, very distinctly, it's like I had the money, and the first time God was like, oh no, you don't, and like He wanted me to do something very specific with the money that it benefited me in absolutely no way. And then I'm like, okay, well, I guess we'll save up and get it again. The next time, I was ready to buy it. And then at that time, there was another need that came up in our family. And it's like, okay, you're not going to buy another watch when you have this other need that you need to take care of. It's probably a medical expense or something. So now I'm like, okay, you know what? I got a watch and I'm going to be content with it. Like it works, right? It's not the latest one. It's not the coolest one, but it's a watch. And so, but you see, I think right now there's this thing, I'm an Apple guy. I know there's Jeremy's an Android guy, and we're still friends.
No, I'm a cheap guy. Let's get it right.
But I think I read something like, aren't they coming out later this year? It's like with AirTags 2 and
I love that movie.
iPhone 17 and something else, and it's like, well, whatever you have isn't good enough because you got to get the next one. So there's this just endless upgrades. And, nowadays it's like the phones, my phone right now is probably about 3 years old. And, the irony is like, I'll probably be lucky to get another year out of it. But the battery, we're here at whatever time this is in the afternoon. Well, I've been in meetings, so I've not used my phone as much today, but my battery is like, they purposely make them only last the 2 years. And then you got to get another one. And then the last one is just this whole comparison culture that you just look at what other people are doing. So social media amplifies it because, I have friends all over the country and I have friends in other countries, but I wouldn't know what they were doing unless I saw it on social media. Now, if you guys came, if you guys, drove into the parking lot with a nice new shiny car, then I would see it because I work with you guys. But, as people like, man, I haven't even thought about that person and how long. And wow, that person just got a new car and that person just got this and that person got that. And so we unnecessarily compare ourselves to others because we can. So I think that's just the mentality of the world. Because why else wouldn't you? There's like the old phrase, keeping up with the Joneses, right? Well, my neighbor gets a new thing, so I got to get it, and I'm behind. So but that's just a very worldly perspective, and because we live in the world, we feel the pressure of that. And really, I made a joke about it on Sunday, but it's really hard sometimes, even when I've been fortunate to get in the last year. I can think of 2 very specific ones where like these cars have like less than 1,000 miles on them, and rental, and one of them had less than 100 miles on it. And I remember the lady, I don't know why she just liked me, this older lady working at the rental car and place, and she's like, I'm gonna give you this special car. And I thought she was, I'm like, it's like brand new, man. The floor mats are wrapped up in the bag in the trunk.
Oh man!
And like you get in it and you're like, smells like a new car, right? And then I had this like brand new Toyota Tacoma TRD truck that I got on one trip. And it's got all these bells and whistles, and it had this thing where like it would drive itself. Like it wasn't, the Tesla self-driving car, but you could literally take your hands off the wheel for like up to 60 seconds.
Oh man.
And all this stuff. And then I get back home, get in my car, and I'm like, there's not even Apple CarPlay on this thing. I gotta use this tiny screen on my phone, and it's just the world we live in. So it's hard. Contentment is hard. It also is not the way. It's not natural to us, and everything around us is calling us to be discontent. And there are marketers who are specifically trying to create discontentment in our lives, so we buy their product.
Yeah.
So it's very hard. So people if you feel it, it's like, we all feel it.
I think I like one of the things you said to start off the message was, this is a message you probably won't hear anywhere else. Because if you go to any of the social media channels, any streaming service, if you go drive your car or go to any other place, you're just going to hear you need something else. You're not going to hear, hey, how about you be content with what you have? But I think just it's really freeing what the Bible offers. Of how we can live regardless of the circumstances that we're in.
Yeah, and I think it's really changed the quote American dream. Years ago it was, by the time you retire, you can have a good life, and provide for your family, provide for your kids. And it's been interesting through the decades to watch that the age that people expect it has gotten less and less and less. And I think when I was young, there was the expectation of, well, by the time I'm in my 40s, I should have the house and the boat and everything else. Now, kids really right out of high school in their young 20s expect to have everything now. And it's that expectation. You see it on social media, and it's unrealistic. It's completely unrealistic.
Well, I think there's some of that, which is, this is the picture of what success looks like. Or if I'm a kid, I grew up in a certain level of affluence or whatever that was, and then I get out of the house and I discover I'm poor. I didn't know I was poor the whole time I was growing up, and now so I've got to arrive at whatever I think normal is. And I can't remember where I heard this, but there's a common expectation that I will always have a car payment, or I will always have a whatever credit card payment, or whatever the thing is. And so I just don't think about, well, I could save up and just pay the thing off and drive the car into the ground or whatever. And just like, well, if I'm always going to have this, is like, you're always going to have a utility bill. So I might as well just, I'm going to pay for electricity. I might as well just always have a car payment, and just I'm leasing the car or whatever the thing is, instead of, no, you can totally pay it off and then take that and save it and then pay cash for the next one or whatever those things are. That's just not the way the messaging goes. You just don't think that that's an option. Not even that you think, oh, that's not an option that is available to me. It's like, you never even thought of it as an option, I got older this last week. I turned 52, and there was a email that I got that I thought was really great. It said, we have a special gift, a special birthday gift just for you. And I opened the email like, oh, they're going to give me something for nothing. Like, no, we're giving you 15% off. So my gift is to give you my money? That doesn't work. But that's like spaving. That's spaving. Yeah. I wasn't going to spend any money, but now I will only give you 85% of what you actually want. Yeah. You said something too about, I can't remember the quote exactly, so I'm going to mess it up. But in a lot of cases, one of the things that we become discontent with life because there was an unstated deal that we thought existed between us and God. That is, I do all of the godly things, I keep all the commandments or whatever thing is, and then you're going to bless me with either a great family, a lot of money, whatever blessing, whatever your definition of blessing is. But if I do all the right things, God, you are now obligated to do right by me, and that's the deal. And some great quote about we wrote a deal that God never, like, we forged God's signature. That's a great line. I've heard that testimony from people. Like I was just thinking this morning, I was walking around, there's several stand-up comedians that I'm like, I don't know if I should follow them anymore because of just I think they started in church land doing stand-up, and then for reasons have moved out of church land. Like, and so now they're making all these really quote unquote cool statements about religion being, a problem and all these things. Like, I don't know if I can follow you anymore. But one of them, it literally was this. His testimony is, I had a deal with God and God did not live up to that deal. I'm like, that is super dangerous because there was no deal, but now you're mad at God.
Yeah, I can think of in my life too, just friends who had these expectations, and they seem to be walking with God, but because life didn't turn out the way they expected, then they're like, well, I don't even believe God exists anymore.
Yeah,
and it was just really sad for me to watch. So I think but it comes back to some of the things that I expected. And if God doesn't hold it up, well, does God even exist? Is sometimes the argument people put in place.
Yeah, it's. I mean, again, it's where it's so easy for us to naturally start out there, and this is also where there's just the dangers of prosperity gospel and word of faith stuff, and just all of that. That we are saying God said some things He didn't say. And particularly, the deal part is, we think that if I keep God's rules, then He'll make my life better. And it's just, sort of this little exchange, because that's how we relate to one another. There's a lot of exchange between people. It's like, okay, well, hey, you do this thing for me and I do this thing for you. And okay, God, I'll keep your rules even if I don't like them, but you're going to make my life better. Mm-hmm. And then what's really sad is when people get mad at God because He didn't keep the deal, but it wasn't a deal He made anyway. And so that's just, it's bad. It's bad theology. It's bad understanding. And this is why one of our jobs in church life is to help people understand. That's why Jesus talks about losing your life. I've often thought about this because I have my undergraduate degrees in marketing, and so I think about all these kinds of things, and in a lot of ways, the product, the product, I'm doing air quotes, the product that we're selling is an impossible product. Like, hey, lay down your life, deny yourself, take up your cross every day. Mm-hmm. What? How are you going to sell that? That's right. Usually it's, well, here are all the features and the benefits of this, but called to walk obediently, and God gives us the power, and He gives us the help to walk through the things that He has for us. But the Christian life is it's not an easy life. It's not this cushy life. I mean, think about the entire global church. It's pretty cushy here in America, which I think is exactly one of the reasons why the gospel is exploding in other places. Mm-hmm. I mean, our biggest problem here in America is we have too much.
Yeah, we're comfortable.
We're comfortable. We don't need God. I'm fine, and that's where, I was kind of, trying to be a little bit humorous with, I've never seen somebody who had a giving problem, and most people don't have a saving problem. It's a spending problem. Mm-hmm. But there are people who have a saving problem, and it's not wrong to save money like that. It's wise, because if you have some money saved and the car breaks down, or you get a leaky shower, or whatever it is, you have money to take care of it. You don't have to go without or go into debt to get it fixed. Mm-hmm. But then there's a point where you're like, man, I don't have to worry about anything. And actually my trust and my faith and my hope is in my savings account, not in God. Mm-hmm. And that's not a good place to be. And I've seen people before, if they put too much hope and faith and trust in their savings account, well, then God might orchestrate things where, guess what? I've talked to people before and, doing a lot of the Dave Ramsey emergency fund, which is a great idea. But then they'll get mad when they have to spend some of that emergency fund, because, man, we had to buy a new washer and dryer. But you had the money, right? Yeah, but I got to use that emergency fund.
It's kind of why it's there.
What's it for?
Welcome to the emergency.
So anyway, but yeah, it's just, again, it's just everything is so, we are, because we're broken people, because we start out as sinners, we're hardwired one way. And God's ways are so different from what comes so natural.
Yeah, well, you brought up just a little bit ago, and I don't know if this is the direction you want to go, but you brought up just a little bit ago, you mentioned the prosperity gospel, which is a general term for preachers, and I'm using air quotes again, preachers.
We have a lot of bunny ears in this show.
Yes. But yeah, prosperity gospel, it's preachers who focus in on the scriptures about God wanting to bless us, and they create a whole doctrine about if we're following God in the right way, if we're following God fully, then he will bless us financially. And, a lot of those like TV preachers will take it as far as if you send in enough money, God will bless you financially. And so God becomes a way of financial gain. But I was listening to a short YouTube clip of a good preacher, and he actually defined why the prosperity gospel is so dangerous. And it's because the Bible clearly states that our spirit is at war with the world, the flesh, and the devil. And those are three things trying to draw us away from God that we have to fight against. But the prosperity gospel promises us that we can have Jesus and the world. It promises us the very thing that we should be trying to fight against. And so that's the danger of the prosperity gospel. And when it was explained that way, it was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And you could even take it as far as, it's promising us the world and parts of our flesh that we want. So, 1.5 out of the 3 enemies, it's actually promising to give us.
Well, the thing that has always cracked me up about the process, because it is very enticing of, if you want to figure out, am I doing things the way God wants me to, you would assume, well, if I follow God's ways, then he will bring blessing. But there's 2 sort of issues that have either been explained to me or in my quiet time it's shown up. One of them is, well, okay, so if that is true, that if I really obey God, then he's the house, the car, whatever the things are, then was Jesus disobeying God? Jesus, because, he's mocked and beaten and crucified and, not believed and all this kind of stuff. So that doesn't, and poor, homeless, that doesn't seem to jive with that theology. Or a lot of the early church fathers, Peter, Paul, Thomas, all those guys like that, they either were way in disobedience because of how their life actually went, so it doesn't quite, why I know that I am a lesser believer than Jesus or Peter or, any of those guys. Like, so why would I assume that my life should go in a worldly way? It should go smoother.
Right.
They should have had it much better than anything that I'm going to have. So I should assume it's going to be hard if I'm walking in God's ways.
Well, I think, the very, it's kind of an interesting turn this conversation has taken, but I think I brought it up, so it's my fault. But
season 3 takes a turn.
The prosperity gospel is pretty much like it in a nutshell is God wants you healthy, wealthy, and happy. And that's just, you can't find that anywhere in Scripture. God does bless His people when they live within His boundaries. But the blessing is, we talk about tangible and intangible blessings. So the blessing isn't always just financial gain. And, when it comes to being healthy, this part of this is this contentment that Paul, you think all the troubles that Paul went through, I'm sure he got really sick sometimes, so there's times where while you're sick and you're laying there and you're learning to be content, and God is doing some things in you and teaching you some things. So, again, and this is where it can be kind of, it's a hard topic to talk about because we as humans think in extremes, right? And that's why there's the prosperity gospel. There's also the poverty gospel,
right?
Where that's lesser talked about, but that's where people think that anybody.
It's even less marketable.
Yes, it's even less marketable.
Well,
but
they love it for pastors, just not for themselves.
Yeah. but that's basically like if you have anything, then you're not very godly. Right. You should be homeless and you should give everything away to other people. And our human heart wants to live in the extremes rather than walking obediently with God. And what does this mean for me? Which again goes back to, this whole series is based on these conditions or these principles. So that's why we started with, we got to bear our own responsibility. We got to bear our own load. And it happens to be that the four of us are all pastors. Now we've done different things in the past before God called us to this point, but there's nothing wrong if God calls you to be in business or God calls you to be in medicine or law or a teacher. And if God gives you the ability to make a lot of money, like it's not automatically wrong, like you have a different responsibility than somebody who has a lesser job in the terms of what their earning power is. So it starts with bearing our responsibility, and then as we're bearing our responsibility and we're taking care of what we need to and earning what God has for us, then we need to learn to be content with that. And content, not complacent. So especially, our producer here, she and her husband lead our young professional group. If you're a young professional, you probably have some ambitions of being a professional at different stages in your life.
You want to be an old professional.
Yeah, well, and the reality is, shocker, when you graduate college and get your first job, you're probably not going to make what you think you should make. And that may not happen in the second or third job. It's not until you get to be later in your career. So there's nothing wrong with having ambition, but can you be content? Like, my life is okay. I've got goals, things I want to see happen, but I'm okay if they don't happen on my timetable, and I'm okay if they don't even happen at all, because that's not what God has for me. So there's this learning to be content in whatever the circumstances are. And really where Paul, he learned the secret, so he's the one talking about the secret, but he's a prisoner, but he's off of that emotional roller coaster.
Right.
And I think that's really where we're going to still face the ups and downs of life, but we don't have to ride the roller coaster and be in the emotional ups and downs just because we're in a down. And that doesn't mean it's wrong to be sad if something difficult happens, or to be frustrated for a moment when your goals are blocked, but you can't stay there and then say, well, I can't do anything, I'm stuck. What's my responsibilities? How do I move forward in the middle of this? And then take that next step. So that's really why it's a secret, because not very people know.
Well, I think, some of all that, I think some of the deal gets forged too based on, it's based on me, but it's my definitions of things. So what I define as a blessing, or what I define as good, or good to me, then if God doesn't meet my definition of what those are. So I was, I would assume, like, there's the verse, God works all things together for the good of those. So I'm like, there was some song that came out forever ago where that line was just like repeated. I'm like, yeah, it's good. I'm like, wait, hold on. I think how I interpret that line or that Bible verse is God works together all things for my gain. not my good. Like my definition of good means gain. Like I'm going to financially benefit, or I'm going to relationally benefit, or I'm going to grow. That's what good means. And sometimes good means that bad things didn't happen. Like your actual status didn't change at all, but problems didn't come that would have come had you been in disobedience. Like that is still good. Or there are just other things. Again, God treated Jesus good. God treated Paul good. God treated, that there is good that is beyond my definition. And if I can get out of my definition and acknowledge that God's definition is going to be different than mine, but his is right and mine's wrong, so I need to figure out how do I adjust my definition to him, then maybe I have a shot at seeing, like, the definition of content is just see things as they are and be okay with how things are. Not to not have ambition, all those things, but this is reality. This is what God has for me, and I will live in this and know that God is going to do his definition of good to me in the midst of that. Versus, no, it's going to be my or the influencer's definition of good, or whatever the thing is.
Right. I mean, think about just how would you forget about the Bible for a minute? All right, you tap into your carnal instincts.
Oh no,
how would you describe good? Right. I mean, I would describe good as it's not hard, it's fun.
There's no hassle.
It's what I want. Good is the opposite of what I don't want, right? So when there's my definition of good, and then there's God's definition of good, and the whole point of the Bible is it's our job to get on God's page, not God get on my page, and that's where we can really spin our wheels when like, oh God, I don't understand why this would happen, and that's why there's the why question, which sometimes isn't helpful, but then there's the what. Well, what are you trying to do in the middle of this? And I can look back on my life, and it's part of these, the experiences, and there's all kinds of experiences where it's like, that is not what I want. That was not fun. I would not call that good. But on the other side of it, and sometimes years later on the other side of it, I can see how God used that for my good, particularly, a couple of like kind of turning point things where it was like, that, I don't know, I might have gone a different direction. It had that thing that wasn't good in the moment have happened, but it was good because it helped me go the direction that I went, and here I am now. So, I think that's, very well said, that it's really comes down to it's whose definition of good is the right one. It's God's, not mine. And I can't fully see or understand his definition all the time. Certainly in the moment. Yeah,
and sometimes it may not be apparent in this life, but sometimes it does show up years later where it's like, oh, thank you, God. I didn't understand what you were doing in the moment. It seemed like an utter loss to me in the moment, but years later it's like, oh, you were either protecting me, you were protecting others, or you're using that really difficult thing to help draw other people to know you. And seeing how God is so good, he's able to take the broken things of the world, the things that are losses, and actually turn it into something that is really a blessing to many people.
So this is a question for the table. So you mentioned you had a point in there of God teaches us contentment through experience. So we have to make choices. We have to trip over some things. We have to live life. And hopefully, if we've been trying to follow after God, he will show us how to be content. So, question on the table. What are some experiences that you've had that have helped you to whatever level of contentment that you're at? What have been some ways that you have learned that through experience?
I think in a lot of ways, usually contentment comes after hard experiences. I think, one of the things is, I think when you're a new parent, you realize how content you could have been with the level of sleep you had. And then I think part of it is sometimes when the hard things happen, still saying thank you to God in the midst of them, and being thankful even for the regular experiences. So I think, one of those is just like, Lord, thank you for the sleep I was able to have. Whenever you have a new baby, you're like, okay, what type of sleep is this? Like you're just like, this is like a series of naps. It's not even actually like a full night of sleep. And so I just remember a season though, where we had our first kid. He wasn't eating well. And so my wife was trying to figure out how to be a new mom. And then I was really actually hoping for a promotion at work. And in that same season, some circumstances worked out that like, it was just, hey, the promotion can't happen yet. It was, hey, you've done a great job, but you can't be promoted yet. And so that was a real test for me in being content. And I remember I was attending Hope Church, and, someone was talking on contentment that Sunday, and it was, if life doesn't change, can you still be content? And so it was like, I really want this promotion, but what if that promotion never happens? Can I still choose to be content? Like if the circumstances don't change favorable. And so that was really helpful for me to wrestle through. And so I think you mentioned the why, not what question. Like instead of, I got in this wheel of like, why is God allowing this to happen? But I think hearing okay, well, what is God doing in this? And I think in some ways that helped my wife and I really to turn to the Lord of like, we're trying this in our own strength. It's not going well with sleep. We're trying to, I was hoping to get promoted, but Lord, we're going to trust you regardless of where the circumstances go. And so I think for me, some of those experiences have been those low experiences where it's, instead of choosing to accomplish certain results on my own strength, it's forcing me to turn to God, who's the one who is in control of the situation that I'm in.
So this is my attempt to sound current, but so I'm gonna tell a Forrest Frank story here in a minute.
Oh wow!
I don't know him, but I will tell this.
Do you know the dance?
I don't, but I have a daughter who does.
Yes. My kids are like, Daddy, we're going to teach you that. And I was like, you can show me.
I guess you could instruct me, but it's not going to look like that. I'll tell you that. But years ago, I was reading because I think it was another low point in my life where I came across the verse that's been there the whole time of, this is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. And I think the whole time I was growing up, this very happy song that we would sing as kids, like, this is the day that the Lord, I was like, oh yeah, let's go. I will rejoice, And I realized that there were some low moments, and maybe it was like most of 2020. I was like, God made today. I will rejoice and be, kind of grumbling your way through.
Just change it to a minor key.
Right. I did, yeah. But that whatever the day is, it has been ordained by God. These are the circumstances that He wants you to walk through, to stretch your faith, to walk. And the Forrest Frank thing is, it's been hilarious just watching this story. It's not a hilarious story, but it's just this thing, watching it happen, where there's a Ring camera video of him on a skateboard playing with his kid, and he launches his skateboard into like the little gravel flower bed area and loses the skateboard and falls on the lower, like his lower lumbar is like right on the corner of the cement, and breaks his back, like has to go to the hospital on a backboard, and the whole, like, he has broken his back. So then, next videos on, show up of, he's like, well, you know what? I'm going to write songs still. I'm laying flat on my back. And he writes this whole song called God's Got My Back, right? Ha, ha, ha. But that Bible verse is in the song. Like, this is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. He's laying on it at the time. He's laying on his back. Physical therapy is excruciatingly painful, but still he's ginning up the will of, this is what God has given me. I will still rejoice in it because I know my God's going to do good to me. Even if I feel down right now, I can still rejoice that God is working through this situation. And I think that is there's more to the story if you want to follow Forrest Frank on TikTok or YouTube or wherever you find him. But it's just the whole thing. It just gets weirder, and not weirder, but just like there's potentially a miracle where God just straight up healed his back and there's no more break after 2 weeks, and it should have taken months to heal. And then David Crowder breaks his leg. And so that turns into a joint song about, standing on the rock, because Crowder can't stand on anything right now. Anyway, but I just thought it was really good sentiment of like, I hurt, but I can still rejoice because God's doing good to me. And I think, that if I can hold on to that truth, that really helps me be content even when this is not what I want. Life is not going the way I want. I can still be content because God is teaching me something through this. That's my story.
What was the original question?
How have you learned contentment through experience? Or how have you found Forrest Frank songs? No. How have
Do you know who Forrest Frank is?
I have heard the name.
How have you learned? I have teenagers.
Jeremy has a teenage son, not teenage daughters.
Yeah, that's probably it.
It's just, yeah.
My 6-year-old, I think, favorite artist is Forrest Frank. So
yeah, I remember the first time Lindy put, like, you got to hear this. I'm like, this sounds terrible. But because of this broken backstory, I'm like, okay, I see his heart and I can get in. It's still not my favorite stuff.
I actually think I heard his name the first time because I was talking to a parent of a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it came. Anyway.
Yeah, could have been my kid. Could have been my 6-year-old.
But how do I learn contentment? Not well.
Being honest, appreciate it.
Yeah. Instead of like one specific instance coming up, a few weeks ago when I was preaching, I used the analogy of when God's trying to teach us something, he'll take us around the mountain, see how we respond. And especially in the area of contentment, I think God usually has to take me around the mountain quite a few times. And I can see each time looking back that my attitude and my reactions get better each time around, but it usually takes me a while. I don't handle discontentment very well, I admit.
I just love that. So, and I know it's coming. I can see the circumstances, and I still make the wrong choice.
Yeah. I get closer.
I'm at least able to identify.
Short of bringing up specific instances, I think it takes me a while, and I am thankful that God is gracious and merciful and doesn't just squash me the first time I get it wrong, because there would have been many opportunities for squashing. So,
yeah, I think it really is. I have lived this message in many ways. It really is learned by experience over time. And, I said there, like, we're just going to rip the Band-Aid off. And here's the bad news, that most of the experiences come through times of not having what we want. It's kind of like the only way to learn to be patient is to have to be patient. Contentment is kind of in that same vein. There, you can't really just read a book about contentment and then, now I'm content. There's a lot of life that God wants us to learn, and really experiential is the only way we really learn it. But I can testify that the planned contentment is a lot more fun than the unplanned. And, I think early on in life, the whole planned part was completely foreign to me and non-existent, which means a lot of the hard lessons had to be learned by the unplanned. So to try to, summarize many years of learning into just a kind of as short of a story as I can make it, I think I grew up in a Christian home, but I would say it was more kind of the standard American dream Christian home. A lot of what we talk about today, I didn't go to a church that talked about this kind of stuff. And, we went to church on Sunday and there was some kind of message from the Bible, but it didn't really apply to life and trying to walk with Jesus and have our life look different. So I just had a lot of the consumerism stuff in just ingrained in me. And, I still like nice things, but stuff used to be really important to me. I think about different cars that I had or trucks, and it was really important to me. And it was like, and even just like stupid things I did when like little things happened to them or something got a dent or a scratch. And, sometimes we say like, you can be possessed by your possessions and totally missing the point on some things. So I had, what I'll call a season of life where, I had a lot of nice things, and there's nothing wrong with nice things. But part of the story is, I worked in business for about 4 years before God called me to ministry. And so we bought a house pretty young that was well below our means because of the type of job that I had and the type of money that I was making. And then, job changed, I changed a company, and long story short, we stayed in that house way too long. And what we really should have done was been content with, okay, the next job that God brought along was not providing at the same level of income that the previous one did. And again, this is before I'm in ministry. This is just I'm working in business. And so looking back on it, well, we probably should have sold that house pretty soon after this job change happened. And we didn't. We stayed around, much longer than we should have.
It was a nice house.
And it was a great house. It had more bedrooms than we needed. It had a lot of hosting area. We had lots of parties there. We got to do a lot of ministry there. We led groups there. So it was a huge blessing. But I think, we held on to it too long. Is basically what I'm saying. And then we kind of really had to now we really got to get rid of this house. So we had to sort of dramatically change our living situation to just sort of right things, the way that they needed to be to sort of like we were talking about, like live within your means, right? Like when we started out, we were living well within our means, and then our means changed, and then we weren't living within our means anymore. And then that just started to, compound some problems. And in the course of that, some of, the nice stuff that we'd had, like we're either selling it for very cheap to get rid of it or giving it away, and it's because we can't keep it anymore. There's not going to be room for it. And, in those nice vehicles that I had, I've learned that like it at almost 47 years old, the most important thing to me when it comes to a car, after the fact that it starts and runs,
amen, brother,
is air conditioning.
Yes.
Air conditioning. I really don't care how it looks, and I don't care what kind of leather seats or whatever it has. I was joking earlier. I do like Apple CarPlay. I just like the screen. It
is nice.
So I think now my I'm content with a 20-year-old car that I have, that someday, every time I turn it on, one more time, Lord. And we had a little hairy couple of days back in the late spring when it didn't start, and praise God, a friend was able to help change the alternator. That's all it was, and it just kept going, So, someday I'll need a new car, but at this point, I'm like, this is fine. I'm, looking back on my, myself and my, kind of my 18 to 25-year-old self. And if you're 18 to 25 and you're listening, I'm not picking on you. I'm just saying that the experience of learning contentment, it really is an experience, and it allows you to be content with different things. So again, I still like nice things, and it was super fun to get that brand new Toyota Tacoma truck, to get to drive that for 36 hours while I was on that trip, and all that. But I think it's really learned over. It's learned over time. It's learned by experience, and I think it's just also the more you grow and walk with God, you just realize, like I was saying there towards the end of the message, that the stuff really becomes props. Like, it's necessary. Brian, you're a theater guy. Props are necessary for the scene, right?
Yeah.
So we got to have transportation. We got to have places to live. We got to, we got to wear clothes. We got to do those things. But
it's not the story.
It's not the story.
Yeah, the props aren't the story.
Yeah, it's not the story. And I think what you can do is you can have greater engagement with the story.
Yeah.
When you learn to be content.
Yeah.
Because when you're chasing the comparison and you're just chasing all the consumerism, it sort of overtakes the story and you lose the focus. So I just want to encourage, if somebody right now, if they're in this school of contentment and that's what you're having to deal with, lean into it. We got the financial seminar coming up on Sunday. If you need help, like it's not wrong to ask for help. And I think that's maybe another problem, cultural problem with our country, the rugged individualistic American, like, we don't need help from anybody. We got this. And the problem is if you actually don't got it, you just need to admit you don't got it and then ask for help. And then you can get some help and then you got it. So if you're in that school of contentment right now, it's a really important lesson. And then again, we have to choose, we have to choose it every day. So, I don't know. I think there's, you go through different seasons in life and it's, try to learn what God has for you in the season you're in. So you don't have to take another lap, like you were saying, Jeremy. But man, God knows there's been times I haven't learned it on the fourth or fifth lap.
Right.
Actually, the best way I like to learn is I like to learn from other people's lessons and mistakes.
That's wise.
But some of them you just have to experience it yourself, and that's part of it.
I did think of a story. I don't know if it's too late.
No, we're good.
And it doesn't involve actually like finances or stuff, but it's still contentment. And I know y'all love stories from Cambodia.
Yes.
Vietnam and all stuff. Well, this is not a specific story. This is the general overview of Cambodia. So when I went to Cambodia, graduated from college, and the International Mission Board has a 2-year program specifically for college grads before they get into their full-time careers. And so I decided to do that. It's a two-year commitment. And so I knew about Cambodia before going over there. I knew some other people that had been there for 2 years, I'd been in touch with the leaders and things like that. And so I kind of knew what I was getting into. So, okay, 2 years, we're going to go, and I'm working with college students in Cambodia, teaching English, also teaching the Bible. They'd seen a lot of spiritual growth within the college student community there. So I get on the field, and things are going well. Like, people are coming to know Christ. The older Christians are discipling the younger Christians within the college ministry. Like, it's a vibrant ministry going on there. And about 4 months in, the leaders, their assignment was up, and instead of continuing on, they decided God was calling them back to America. And so 4 months into my tenure there of my 2-year commitment, we get a brand new leader who has not been on the field, who's not led a team before, who had his own cultural issues, and I won't get into all that. But essentially, the ministry just kind of like ground to a halt overnight. And the leader really didn't give us any direction. And after he got on the field, he wanted to go a different direction, but then he wasn't sure. And then he got to the point after a few months of just saying, I just really need to just stop and just reconsider and like pray for like a year. I've given up 2 years of my life to go to Cambodia because I want to see results, right? You see where I'm going with this. I want what I want. I want something tangible for my investment, for my time. Mm-hmm. And it took me a long time wrestling with the contentment of, did God call me here? And did God know this was going to happen? And so is this about what I want to get out of it? Is this about the results that I want to see? Or is this about, if we just grind to a halt for the final year and a half, am I okay with that? Am I okay choosing to do this for 2 years, whether I see the results or not? So yeah, that took me a long time to have to weed through that. And so in the meantime, I got a bunch of other fun stories.
Hey, you know what? Maybe that's what the trip was all about. All the fun stories, because God knew this many years later we'd be doing this podcast, and we need the stories.
Yeah. But I can look back, and this is just a small piece. I can look back and see the steel that God put in me.
Yeah.
Through having to walk through that and having to trust him in so many different ways. But I've heard stories back from college students just from those first few months that continued to grow and continued to be plugged in and have continued to disciple guys.
Yeah.
So I've heard stories of the Cambodian guys and gals who have continued to grow. So I can see bits of God's goodness looking back, and I know there's wide swaths that I don't see, and I have to trust God with that. But yeah, so there's my contentment story.
Good story.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things I'm glad you shared that, because it reminded me of something that I think is relevant to this discussion that I didn't say on Sunday, but if you've been around Hope for a while, then you've heard us talk about our sad hearts, how we all start out with sad hearts, and it's SAD. We're selfish, arrogant, and we're willing to damage other people. And the way that our founding pastor, would say it is, we want what we want when we want it. We deserve it. I don't want to hurt you, but I will if I have to get that thing that I want and that I deserve. And that's really grinds against contentment because it's, I want what I want when I want it and I deserve it. Well, there's nothing content about those statements. It's we start out that way. And even, as we talked already in this conversation about the world, the flesh, and the devil. So that's a part where even as followers of Jesus and even, as pastors, we still struggle with that. There's things that we want, or at least I'll tell on myself, there's things that I want that I feel like that I deserve. I know better than to maybe actually hurt somebody, but, there's times where you have a thought, right? Somebody makes you so mad, and you don't act on those thoughts, but we're human. We have to fight against just the flesh. So that is another big thing. When if you're hearing yourself in your mind, or you're saying out loud these things of like, well, I just deserve that, then you're probably not being content. So, well, why do you deserve that? What's the only thing that we actually deserve?
Hell. We deserve hell.
That's right. Because we start out as sinners. It's the only thing we deserve. Everything else is a gift. And then when you have that perspective, it's like, oh, well, I deserve hell. I don't have hell. I'm saved. Okay, I can be content right now. But I have to remind myself that several times a day.
Yes. I think also just like the story is not always in our results or in our stuff. It's the story is really in faithfulness to God, and God's working through that. So if we don't get the stuff we want, whether that's like, more like financial or just material stuff, or we don't get the results we want, I think it's been helpful for me to think on like, am I being faithful to what God has asked me to do, and trusting him with the results, trusting him with the finances, and letting my faithfulness be one of my main focuses, and letting him really determine the results of this story. And that's just been encouraging, because usually his results are far better than sometimes I think in the short term. I often think in the short term, if I would have gotten the short term results I wanted, I wouldn't have had seen God's goodness sometimes in the long term.
Mm-hmm.
There's a statement that you like, Matt, which is, it's good to live in reality. And I was thinking as we were talking just now about the phrase, like it's an often in advertising, for those of you who are living on a budget, or this is budget conscious or whatever, which I think the translation for that is, if you're poor and you have to really itemize everything that you spend, then this is a great deal for you, right? It's a penny pinching kind of thing. Well, probably, or not, actually. It's probably beyond, there's no saving, it's just spending. But you mentioned the financial seminar that's this Sunday evening at 6:00 here at the building. Everybody should be under a budget. To spend within a budget is good stewardship. There shouldn't be this thing of well, if you're on a budget, then I think the hidden thing in there is there should come a time when you have so much money you no longer have to budget it. You can just spend whatever you want to. But I think all of us who are followers of Jesus have a responsibility to the resources that God has given us. And a budget is, as you said on Sunday, it's a tool to this is the plan. I love this. This is the plan. And you should plan for a net positive. You should be living within your means. And then you have the actual, how'd we do? Is it still positive or negative? But if you are someone who is, I realize that my discontent has led me towards living outside of reality, and I'm outside of my means, and I'm paying my bills on credit cards, and I'm paying my credit card bill with a different credit card, and all of those kind of crazy things. Make time to come to the financial planning thing on Sunday evening, because it's not, as you said on the stage, Matt, it's not going into super detailed, advanced financial schemes and plots and plans and all those kinds of things. It really is. This is what the Bible says about what fiscal responsibility looks like, and here's a very simple plan that you could employ to help start to right the ship and start to get you to live within your means. So again, if that's you should come to that thing. It'll be very helpful for you.
Yeah, it's the beginning. The beginner seminar, the basic one, not the advanced one. And
even Jeff Bezos should be living within a budget.
Bigger budget than mine.
Bigger budget than mine. But a little more detailed.
Yeah, and the guys, and the guys that are leading it, Aaron and Marshall, they are two guys that work in the financial arena. One of them is a banker, the other's a investment guy. So, if you've got those kinds of questions, I'm sure they'd be happy to have a separate conversation. But this one is the basic one. And I think, in the Christian life, we never get away from the basics. I mean, notice the thing that I said about budgeting for godliness. I mean, the very first one was daily time with God. Well, someone could say, well, that's just so basic. Well, it is so basic, but you know what? You still got to do it. It doesn't matter if you're just starting out, if you're a brand new follower of Jesus, or you have been a follower of Jesus for 50 years. That's one thing. You never get past that. None of us were well, I don't have to spend daily time with Jesus anymore because I have arrived. That's not the way that it works. In fact, I like to tell stories about my grandma who's 100 years old, but she spends most of her day with Jesus. I mean, she'll say she wakes up and she's just praying and praising him as she's laying in bed. And at some point she decides to get up, and go about her day. And what is she going to do at 100? There's not a whole lot. I mean, she's in good health, but she doesn't get out and do the stuff we do.
She's not doing pickleball?
No, she's not doing that. But, she's got hummingbirds on the porch she likes to watch and all that. But where she's at in life, she knows she's going to go be with him at some time, not too long from now, and she's spending more and more of her time with him. So, we never get past the basics. And if we don't actually get down the basics, then we can't move on to the advanced things. And that's true for sports. That's true for just about anything that you do. In fact, I mean, just one fun story that, you know, something I'm really proud of my son. He's learning to play hockey. He's getting ready to play his first season of hockey. And, you know, he just, I don't even know how this idea really started, but we got the kids a couple summers ago. They just started doing it. It's hot in Texas. You know what we'd like to do? We'd like to spend some time at the ice rink where it's really cold, right?
A lot of air conditioning.
So they got skating lessons, and then he started getting interested in hockey. And you know, I still remember his very first day on the ice. It was not pretty. And he was not happy. And we had to, you know, dads, you got to give your sons the pep talk, get back out there. You know, you got to do this. But what I was talking to him about just the other day was, I said, okay, you are becoming a really good skater. And you would not be able to play hockey now like you are if you had given up back on that first day of skating. Because you gotta know how to skate. And then what I was trying to encourage him with was, you know what, you are on your way. You're not there yet, but you're on your way where you need to not be thinking about the skating part so that you can think about the hockey part. Right now, he's still thinking about the skating and trying to think about hockey. And it just happens to be this place where he did this class thing, and then it's just free skate time on Friday night. Well, there's like a minor league, you know, non-professional type, more recreational league of adults. And, you know, so they're playing on one of the rinks, and there's the glasses right there. You can walk by and watch. So we watched for a couple of minutes. And, you know, he's watching, you know, these adults play, and these guys did not look like the stars. Okay, let me just say that. But the thing I showed him, I said, you remember those guys? Like they're not thinking about skating anymore. They're only thinking about hockey. So you gotta start with the basics, and then you build from there. But if you never get the basics down, you never really get to advance from there. And it's just like anything else in life. It's that way with the Christian life. So we never get past spending daily time with God.
Yeah, you often hear, like, I think NFL is coming up, season is coming up. I don't know how many times I've heard coaches say, well, we got to get back to the fundamentals. Like, how long have you guys been playing football? You're professional football players, and you're still having to get down to the fundamentals, because that's where you really, you win or lose the game, which then, that I won't go down this road, but then I think it's hilarious that, you know, fundamentalism in Christian world has such a bad rap. Like, well, those are the fundamentals. Shouldn't we be fundamentalists? I mean, I get that some of them take the wrong
Terms can mean
things.
different things.
Yeah.
Some
I don't
people
think that means what you think it means.
I totally get that. Some people take the wrong fundamentals as fundamentals.
Right.
But I say, well, shouldn't we be at the fundamentals?
And even, I mean, I think this is great. Luke, tell us who John Wooden is.
Yeah, he's the UCLA basketball coach from the most winningest part of UCLA's history. Forget how many titles they won in a row.
Yeah.
Over decades, it was just, he's the best coach ever.
So we're talking about college basketball, really good players if you're going to be on the team, right? There's this story about him that he would start out, like, can you imagine being like probably like on scholarship, you know, star player of your high school team. You show up there.
You're the
at
number
UCLA,
one.
You're the guy from your school, and you're now at UCLA. And the first practice, like, he goes back to the fundamentals so far that it's like, how do you put on your socks?
Yes.
So that you don't get blisters. Now, I think those guys know how to put on their socks, right? One would hope, but that's where he started. And, you know, I mean, I think it's something we need to do a better job of, especially as people become followers of Jesus who come from a background that is so far from that. It's like, where do you start? You know, well, here's where you start. Here's step 1. And then you go to step 2. And then you go to step 3. And really, I mean, again, I'm intentionally making a big deal about this. Step 1 for everybody, all the time, for the rest of your life on this planet until you're dead and gone and with Jesus, is you need to spend daily time with him.
Yep.
So super, super important. And then we also need to be around other believers. So we budget for godliness by making Sunday morning a priority to be here. I say here because we're in the church building, but we make a priority to gather together and worship. Now, does that mean, I can never be gone? I can never go on vacation? No. Life has interruptions, but you decide Saturday night that you're going to get up and go to church in the morning. You don't just get up and say, I don't know how I feel right now. Because if I wait, I don't care what it is in life. If it's anything, I'll wait and decide if I feel like it or not. Guess what? I'm not doing it. So it's a decision that actually starts on Saturday night. And then, we were talking earlier this morning in a staff meeting. We got groups coming up. I would love to see everybody in a group. We have all different kinds of groups. So it doesn't matter what kind of group you're in, but we actually need to be spending personal time with Jesus, ourselves. And then we gather together for corporate worship. And you did that message a couple weeks ago talking about that. And there's a lot wrapped up in that. But then we also need to get together with smaller groups of people that can really call us forward and help us continue to grow in godliness. The unique thing about the Christian life is there are individual aspects of it, but then there's non-individual aspects, right? Like, so you look through the New Testament, there's all these statements of the one another's. Mm-hmm. That means it takes engaging with at least one other person to be able to do that. You can't live the Christian life in isolation. And if you try to, you're going to miss out on a huge portion of it. So planned contentment is much more fun than the unplanned. Mm-hmm. So plan for it.
Plan for the unplanned. Maybe. I don't know how you do that. So is there a preview? I know I already gave away maybe one slide from Sunday, but is there
I got one more meme.
Okay.
That I'm going to show just, as we think about the financial squeeze. I like memes.
Yes, you do.
In fact, I saw, I don't know if you'd call it like a video meme almost this morning. It was
like a GIF?
It was more than a GIF, but it was hilarious. There was this. We're not gonna argue here. Some airports, how you have to go up like the stairs to get on the plane. It's not like you have that jet bridge like we have at DFW. So there's this girl, like, starts out like she has this really kind of disgusted face, like she's looking at the camera, and then she walks up the stairs to the plane, and it says something like, "It's 4 a.m. and you had to save $22 6 months ago," because you bought the 4 a.m. flight, right? Because it was so much cheaper, right? I guess that's another thing. In my mid to 40s, I'm willing to pay a little bit more for a flight that is at a more convenient time than a less convenient time. When I was younger, it was like, what's the cheapest price? I don't care when it is. That's the cheapest one. I'm getting it. Now, it's worth the extra.
What cheap is? Well, my back. Dealing with your back over the next several days is more expensive than
Yes, that's right. That's right. So,
a quick story. So last time we flew out, our family was flying out to Colorado. Our flight was like 10:30, something like that. My mother-in-law was staying with us, and she was also flying home the same day. And there was a flight right about the same time as ours. We could all drive together. There was another flight at like 7 a.m. that was like $25 less. And so she was going to book it. And she was asking me, she's like, how about I just go ahead and book this one? And I'm like, so I have to get up at like 4:30 in the morning and take you to the airport to come back and take my family to the airport. It's like, I will give you the $25 cash right now to not have to get up at 4 in the morning.
Hey, that's a few more hours of sleep is worth $25.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You probably spend that in gas, just going back and forth.
That's true. So this week, we're going to talk about being generous. That's another part of, if we need to bear our responsibilities. Then we need to be content, live within our means. And then God, actually, he blesses us in order to take care of ourselves, take care of our needs, but he also intends us to be generous in different ways. So again, kind of un-American. There's Giving Tuesday is the one day that people think about being generous in our country. But, as Christ followers, we should think about it more than just one Tuesday, Mm-hmm. So we're going to wrap the series up looking at the final principle of generosity.
Sounds good. Well, we look forward to seeing you on Sunday. If you know of people, you should invite them. If they're not already attending a church, you should invite them to come to church with us, worship the Lord with us on Sunday, where we wrap up the series of the financial seminary. Man, boy, am I a pastor. Seminary on Sunday night. And hope you all have a great week. We'll see you back at Hope Church on Sunday. It was a better ending than last week. It's still not good, but it was better than last week.
It was not.
You landed.
Not.